Well, Yvonne, first of all, they haven't happened for almost 3 years, so that's a pretty long time between drinks for these, what are supposed to be semi-regular talks between defence officials from both sides. That's the first thing that's quite significant. Second of all, this is the 8th time, according to the Chinese side, that you've had at this official level these military-to-military official talks. So this was supposed to be a regular exchange, allowing people in China's defence ministry and from the Australian side face-to-face to talk about those issues of contention, of which there are increasingly more of these issues, right? But the fact that it was stalled for a few years, just in general, is not a good thing, because the less face-to-face or the less direct communication you have between militaries, the more opportunity there is for misunderstanding and miscalculation. So it is significant. It's kind of not that surprising, because mid-last year you had the first meeting between defence ministers in some time, Richard Marles and his then counterpart, meeting in Singapore at a summit. And at the time they discussed trying to get these semi-regular talks back on track.
Well, why has this meeting taken place now? What do you make of the timing?
Well, the timing is interesting, because just last week we had Australia with the US and Britain giving details of the AUKUS nuclear-powered submarine plan, and we know that the Australian government was offering a briefing to Chinese counterparts. They were apparently briefing diplomats from many other countries as well. So it seems, in terms of military-to-military talks, quite opportunistic timing for both sides. China has been incredibly critical of the AUKUS submarine plan and has already tried to put obstacles up in the international nuclear watchdog, the IAEA. We expect China will continue to lobby other countries, probably for many years, to try and put obstacles in the path of the nuclear-powered submarine deal being realised. But these talks give the Australian side an opportunity to give their perspective on the AUKUS submarines directly to Chinese officials, and likewise it gives an opportunity for Chinese defence officials to give Beijing's perspective. We've seen a statement from China's defence ministry saying that both sides had frank and in-depth exchanges on the international and regional security issues about which they care about, plus negotiations on how to push forward practical cooperation and to talk about further mutual recognition, which would benefit the healthy development of military ties between the two countries. That last bit about mutual recognition, to be honest, I'm not clear what that would be referring to. But in terms of, Yvonne, in terms of cooperation, it was only a few years ago that the Australian Navy would go to China and take part in, say, live fire exercises off the Chinese coast with the PLA Navy. This used to happen quite regularly. It's all been on hold for the past few years because of the diplomatic relationship, because of the COVID issues. So it seems, at least from the Chinese side, that there is some enthusiasm to try and resume that sort of activity.
Well, Bill, tell us a bit more about what we can read into the broader Australia-China relationship from this meeting.
Yeah, it's really hard to know if this is a signal of ties between the two countries getting back to the slightly more normal status that they were in prior to the deterioration of the bilateral relationship and prior to the COVID issues. You'd think it is, because it is the resumption of a semi-regular dialogue. And that statement from the Chinese side is really interesting, that it appears there is some enthusiasm to try and get, joint military exercises going again. It's hard to imagine in the current climate that happening anytime soon. But we were up in Beijing at the time when an Australian ship took part in a Chinese naval flotilla, which was part of an anniversary parade. There were joint live fire exercises off the coast of southern China in about 2016. That happened about once a year in that period. So it seems it is just another somewhat small but important step in diplomatic ties between the two countries getting back on a somewhat more normal level compared to how they've been in the past few years.
Bill, thanks for analysing that for us. Bill Birtles reporting there.
Thanks.